With the 30th overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens went out and selected Clemson cornerback Nate Wiggins. In 2022, with the 14th overall pick, they took safety Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame, and I think most people would agree that those picks have worked out pretty dang well so far. The Ravens once again have the 27th overall pick in the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft, and while I discussed the team's need for an edge player in my previous video, there could be an argument made that a legitimately equal need could be placed on an elite talent drafted for the Ravens secondary. Safety Marcus Williams has been cut, Brandon Stevens signed a deal to play with the New York Jets, and it's still up in the air if, though I'm hopeful, Barbarius Washington returns as a Raven in 2025. All of this to say, the Ravens will need to not only replace some depth in their secondary, but starting talent as well. If the right player falls into their lap, which has happened before, we know the Ravens won't hesitate to run that card right up there and bring them into Baltimore. The question for today's video is, are there any of these corners and safeties that are the type of talent EDC and the Ravens coaching staff consider worthy of the 27th overall pick? Let's get to it. Welcome in everyone, this is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and I'm going to break this video down into two respective groups. First, the corners, and then the safeties. Now, of course, for all these athletes, we'll bring up facts such as their combine results and their numbers during their collegiate careers. But much of it will be based on my own opinion and whether I believe the player is a good fit for the team. So know that going in, and you may and probably will have a different view on some of these players than I do. The players I've chosen are based on them potentially being there, and while some might not be, I avoided overly unrealistic options such as Travis Hunter. Starting with the first on our list, we have Texas cornerback Jahdae Barron. Listed at just under 6 foot and a few pounds shy of 200, Barron is shorter and more compact than a player like Nate Wiggins, but brings a similar mentality to his coverage. A physical and aggressive player both at the line of scrimmage and at the catch point on routes, Barron has shown a high level of football IQ by diagnosing routes early and taking calculated risks when playing the ball, which shows in his 5 interceptions just last year. Jahdae had a solid combine showcasing his speed in both the 40 with a sub 4.4 and in his 10-yard split with a 1.5. Great for getting off the line and staying right with his receivers. He could be docked for his less than impressive 35-inch vertical or his slightly shorter arm length at just over 29.5 inches, but I wouldn't say those are reasons not to take him based on the tape that he's put out as well as his production on the field. Playing for Texas has given the Ravens the opportunity to see him play against some high-level competition, and seeing that he allowed 37 completions on 68 targets, which is 54.4%, for only 284 yards, no touchdowns, and those 5 picks, we can see that he's been tested more than enough to show what he can offer a team like Baltimore. I have my doubts that Jahdae Barron will still be on the board by the time the Ravens get there at 27, but if he is, I wouldn't be mad at them adding his aggressive talent and versatility to our secondary. Next, I'm going to cover 3 of our potential first-rounders at the same time, and I do this for a couple reasons. The first is that there is a reasonable gap from players like Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, and Jahdae Barron to this next pack of corners. The second reason is that we needed more options to discuss other than Barron, who may not even be available. Now, that isn't to say that I'm just throwing names out there for content's sake, and that every one of these 3 players we're about to discuss would be a reach if taken by the Ravens. But as I discussed in my video covering possible edge defenders, the Ravens' big board may have these guys higher or lower than the national consensus, or me for that matter. But enough preamble. Let's get into this group of 3 corners, which include East Carolina's Siobhan Revell Jr., Notre Dame's Benjamin Morrison, and Ole Miss's Trey Amos. Straight away, we see a few similarities and differences in these 3 players. All are about 6 foot to 6'2" and nearly the same weight, so there's no issue of height or length, as they all have the size you want in a potential outside corner. The major difference we see between these 3 is in their playstyle and experience. Trey Amos has played more games than Revell and Morrison have combined between his 3 years at Louisiana and his following 2 split between Alabama and Ole Miss. Siobhan Revell showcased lockdown ability in his 2023 season with East Carolina, and if not for an ACL tear in 2024, which cut his season to only 3 games, some draft experts believe that he could have been a top 15 pick in this year's draft. Benjamin Morrison falls somewhere in between Amos and Revell when it comes to experience, having played full seasons in 2022 and 2023, but unfortunately suffered a hip injury halfway through his 2024 season, which not only kept him out of the combine, but more importantly, some of the biggest games with the brightest lights this year, which I'm sure teams would have loved to have seen him play in to evaluate his game further. All three of these athletes are impressive, and each would bring talent and potential to any NFL team that drafts them, but there are question marks for each of them when it comes to whether or not they are truly first-round talents, worthy of the Ravens' 27th overall pick. Siobhan Revell Jr.'s physical gifts, measurements, his 2023 season, and the start of his 2024 season might be enough for a team to gamble on. He's shown growth every year, and having a 6'2" corner with 32.5-inch arms that runs a 4.4 across the field from Nate Wiggins is enticing to say the least. My two biggest knocks against him would be his lack of experience, having only one full season as a starter, and the other is health concerns throughout his high school and college career. And while some people might slight him or knock him for the level of competition that he played against, I'm not going to do so. In his 2023 season, the Pirates went 2-10, while Revell had a solid season, allowing only 44% of the passes thrown to him to be completed for 250 yards and only a single touchdown. Now, it was not against the upper echelon of opponents that we're familiar with in the college football ranks, but again, you can't choose who you play, and who he played against, he played well. As far as Amos and Morrison, I would simply say that they have the talent to succeed at the NFL level, having played consistently well against better competition than Revell in college, but I see both as solid second-round picks rather than true first-round talents. Obviously, all three could go on to prove me wrong and have amazing NFL careers, and I hope they do for their sakes. But in my opinion, there will both be better players available at 27 and solid options to choose from in rounds 2, 3, and 4, where the Ravens could take a swing on a corner. With that being said, let's move on and discuss some of the safety options that might be available that the Ravens would be interested in for their first-round pick. A player that I've seen many Ravens fans show interest in and even mocked to the Ravens several times is Georgia safety Malachi Starks. Having significant starting experience with 43 games under his belt with the Bulldogs, including the 2022 National Championship game, Starks has proven his ability time and again against some of the highest level competition available throughout his college career. Known for being a complete safety, where he has improved his game every year to becoming a defender that opponents actively avoided when facing him. As a former 100-meter track star in high school, his speed has translated well onto the football field as a dominant force and downhill run defender. He's got solid tackling ability, being credited with only 15 missed tackles over his nearly 2,500 snaps, compared with his successful 197 combined tackles, meaning that for every 13 tackles he makes, he'll only miss one. His versatility is a big part of his game. Starks has logged 544 snaps lined up in the box, 664 in the slot, and 1,191 lined up deep, meaning that these combined 2,399 snaps, he was deep for 49.6% of them, and in the slot or in the box for 50.4%. As I said, a complete safety. At 6'1" and almost 200 pounds, running a 4.540 with a 1.51 10-yard split, he has all the experience, ability, and physicality to perform at a high level immediately for this Ravens defense. So, having said all that, it's a slam dunk pick, right? In my opinion, yes, but the Ravens have to consider things a bit differently. You see, the problem with picking Starks at 27 is that as of right now, he would be behind Kyle Hamilton and Ardarius Washington for starting snaps, and while I'm sure he would still see significant time on the field throughout the season, unless he completely outplays Washington before the season starts or early on in the regular season, this is more of a pick for next year once Washington is potentially gone. I still think it would be an excellent pick for the Ravens from a BPA standpoint, but you would still have to accept that your first-round pick probably won't get as much time starting on the field as you would like or expect. Our second safety option is a fun one to imagine, and while some might see it as a reach at 27, the potential pairing of Kyle Hamilton and Nick Emanwari out of South Carolina would probably be as fascinating to watch for Ravens fans as it would be worrying for opponents' offensive coordinators. As a physical specimen, you likely won't find a better one than Emanwari for a generation or even more, as his relative athletic score, or RAS, came out to a perfect 10, which is the first time for a safety out of 1,079 that have been ranked since 1987. For safety position, he ranked above the 90th percentile in every event he participated in at the Combine. For some context, let's look at how his Combine stacks up against a former first-round pick in safety Derwin James. His 4.38 40-yard dash was nearly a tenth of a second faster than James's 4.47. His 10-yard split was nearly identical, with Emanwari running a 1.49 and James a 1.5 flat. Eamon jumped 3 inches higher in the vertical and 6 inches further in the broad. The only event James outperformed Eamon was the bench press, where James put up 21 to Eamon 20. Beyond the testing numbers, Eamon was a tackling machine on the field for the Gamecocks, amassing 244 total and 166 solo over his 3 years. He is credited with missing 16 tackles in his 2022 season as a freshman, but only 13 combined over the following 2 seasons. In coverage, Eamon uses his combination of size and speed to dominate all but the most elite route runners, eliminating supposed mismatches and being responsible for a number of coverage sacks by the South Carolina defense. For many of the same reasons that I think Malachi Starks could be viewed as a luxury pick and even a reach at 27, I don't see the Ravens getting Nick Eamon with their first-round pick. The thought of having 2 safeties with the size and speed of Hamilton and Eamon on the same field at the same time seems like a dream for any defensive coordinator. Realistically, however, the Ravens would either need to trade out of the first round to have the pick make sense, or trade up in the second to get him well before pick 59, and that just doesn't sound like anything that EDC would do. I won't run through all these 6 players again and tell you which one I would rank higher than the other, but I will say that depending on how the board falls, if either Jahdae Barron or Malachi Starks are there at 27, I can almost guarantee that the Ravens would be highly tempted to take either. If you guys enjoyed this breakdown of some secondary players that the Ravens may be interested in drafting, hit the like button. Also, subscribe if you're new, and comment down below which of these 6 players you'd prefer the Ravens take if they were available at pick 27. As always, guys, stay safe out there, and go Ravens.